There we go. Yeah, so still working on an experienced volunteer for the build. So I'll do some following up on that internally. Actually, let me assign that to myself. I don't know if Kevin's on here, or Brian. Nate, I think we talked about Istio with MCS the last time. I don't know if you've gotten the reviews you need yet. I certainly haven't had time to do it. So should we just leave it?
At this point, I mean, I've already got the approvals I need. It was really more or less just to kind of inform the community. So we can probably remove it from for the future.
Okay. John, are you here? You want to talk about header casing?
Yeah, I am here. So this is a kind of similar topic to the one we talked about a lot previously with like the local host forwarding, where we have a new behavior that I think most people would agree is better, but we have backwards compatibility concerns, and so we wanted some guidance on how people feel about this one. So basically, the background is that Envoy for HTTP 1 will lowercase all header keys, which is valid in the spec that they're supposed to be case insensitive. The problem is that a bunch of people write bad applications that don't follow the spec, so they get broken when they move to Istio. So Envoy kind of resisted doing this preserve casing for a while because they wanted to follow the spec, but eventually enough users were broken by it that they kind of caved. It seems like as we want to be fairly transparent, that may be a good idea for us as well, so that there's less noticeable changes when users drop Istio into their existing applications. Now there is the risk that someone has come to depend on it being lowercased and is now actually broken if we unlowercase it. That seems kind of odd because I would think that your application probably originally was broken by expecting it to have the original casing, and then you install Envoy and you realize that it's broken, and then you fix it properly instead of just changing it to be lowercase only. But I'm sure there's at least one person out there that'll be broken. So I guess, yeah, the question is, how are people feeling about this? We can add an API flag that's like, some global or per proxy flag that's like, change the casing. Yeah, I just want to get some feedback on this.
Go ahead, Neeraj.
Quick question, John. I think I asked this before, but it will be good for everyone else on TOC to hear it. So first is, does it affect any authorization policy or routing policy?
That's a good question. We should verify that. I expect no. If not, it's probably a bug or a security bug because everything in Envoy should be doing things case insensitively on header keys. Now it could affect if they had like external authorization maybe, and that's changed. Or if they have like, I don't know, a custom Lua filter or WASM filter maybe that was doing the incorrect matching on the header. But I think like the core stuff, I mean, we should definitely double check, but I would be surprised if it did.
So can we capture that, Louis, if you don't mind? So my request would be to basically understand those behaviors and document it either way, whether we make it the default or not, so that people understand what are going to be the effects on routing and policies. Thanks.
So someone that has written my 2 cents, those are your 2 cents, John, I presume?
Oh yeah, those are mine. Yeah.
Okay, so,
I kind of mentioned that. That's what I was describing.
Okay, so there are some tricky things with this, right? Oh, Justin, do you want to go ahead? Sorry.
Yeah, just quickly, Yao Ming is doing some work around some of the security vulnerabilities that have been popping up around normalization. So I would just talk to him because he has a huge spreadsheet now of sort of the behavior of lots of different backends and how they respond to different things and like what flags we want to set. So if you haven't talked to him, I would talk to him just because I think this will play nicely with some of that work that he's doing.
Okay. So it's probably worth mentioning, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but this problem is an HTTP 1 only thing, right? Because in HTTP 2 and in Quick, HTTP 3, the lower casing of headers is strictly enforced by the user.
Yeah, this is only HTTP 1.
So no matter what happens, right, there's a broad class of user agents that are going to dump everything back down into lowercase in all cases. And if we start using HTTP 2 as a transport for HTTP 1, by upgrading, right, like the client sidecar uses HTTP 2 as the transport, I don't know we can do this. Right? I'm not sure it's actually possible to do this.
Yeah,
So
that's a great point.
Right, in Envoy, like I would be very surprised if they said retain the header case when they put stuff over an HTTP 2 transport. I don't think they would or could do it. So that makes me a little bit wary about trying to do this. Like I understand it has broken some clients. Have we received a lot of complaints about this?
Raj, I feel like you had mentioned a few people complaining about this. Is that accurate, or did we all just assume that someone else was complaining?
No, I mean, my complaint is generally proxies should be transparent and they shouldn't be mutating things unless they have to. Whether people are relying on this or not, I don't know. But like you said, you can assume somebody will rely on this behavior either way. But I don't understand why we should mutate if we don't have to. Coming back to Louis' question about HTTP2 transport, that's interesting. When it converts things back to HTTP1 to give it eventually to the backend, Louis, what kind of guarantees are given for conversion?
So it follows the spec, right? So the keys are maintained in lowercase. There's no retention of case. Same in HTTP 3. It's very clear about it. Right, so like there's a large number of HTTP 1.1 and HTTP 1.0 user agents out there that are non-compliant in lots of ways. As more and more traffic goes over HTTP 2 and 3, they'll have to adapt, and so will the backends. Right, and anything that's taking user traffic from a browser today, right, is seeing the headers normalized. I believe. Right, we can go and verify, but Chrome, any WebKit-based browser, anything, right, is going to see normalized lowercase headers. Right, so that's a large percentage of user agents. So really, you're talking about API clients at this point that aren't doing that. But anything going in through CDN at this point is probably going to have this effect. Anything coming in from a mobile device is going to have this effect.
But we still need an exception. I mean, for some special cases, I mean, not a mesh wide.
I'm okay with having something, but it would be HTTP 1.1 and 1.0 only, and it probably shouldn't be mesh wide.
And the follow-up is Agpl, because in Agpl, I'm not entirely sure how it will travel through the whole hops. Because
right, if we put HTTP 1 over HTTP 2, it's like we're not going to retain the case.
Yeah,
we can't.
But still, in special cases, we can have the option somewhere, but maybe not as an API, but as a yeah.
Right, but that's going to add a lot of complexity to any transport, right, in Agpl.
Yeah.
So we're probably not going to do that soon, which means it's almost better to give people retain the existing behavior and not oscillate when we add HBone, right? Like Neeraj, I think it would be fine to do this for gateways.
Yeah,
But gateways talking to sidecars, if they use HBone, that will be that, right? Unless we explicitly have them forward HTTP 1.1, and then that makes MTLS more difficult, and we have a problem again.
Well, we can do HTTP 1.1 over HTTP 2 as TCP and some, but it's going to be very complicated to support.
Right, it's going to be a lot of transport selection complexity.
yeah. I think the direction is clearly HTTP 2 or HTTP 3 as the transport, and then do whatever you can over it, right? So if the headers are going to be lost, so I think the problem is this is a long tail of applications, and the well-documented behavior of proxies shouldn't change things, right? That's my concern. So John, what's the current state? So currently we lowercase everything, and is there an option that's provided, or is there no option?
No option in Istio. You can envoy filter, though.
Okay. So it looks like then defaulting will be tricky, but providing an option is not bad, right?
Well, it is bad because it cannot be supported to HBone, so it prevents us to move to HBone or make it impossible to support the API.
Yeah, it does seem kind of like the type of thing that we would maybe say, hey, if your applications are broken by this, just use envoy filter.
Yep.
And fix your app.
And reminder that we have the concept of blessed filters we could add, where we have a filter that is doing exactly that and saying, hey, just apply this filter. And
so we would add a filter that would say, replace this lowercase key with this mixed case key before forwarding to the backend over HTTP 1.1.
Yep, and include it and have it like the telemetry filter, so we support it, and
So does Envoy header rewriting retain case? The existing Envoy header rewriting.
Yeah,
this is about the key, right?
I don't know if you can rewrite a key.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that would be something maybe we could push upstream, or as a basic built-in filter.
Oh, you mean at the end, the last hope to rewrite the key so you get the uppercase you expect, but have all the transport? That's not a bad idea, actually.
You will have duplicate keys in a way, but
no, you replace it. I mean, if you know the backend expects uppercase, yeah, that's an idea.
I don't know if you can do that currently.
Probably not.
No, but could be done.
But it could be done.
How will? Okay, so for the transport, you still get lowercase. Then you convert it at the server side.
Yes.
Security applies to lowercase. Everyone is happy at lowercase, but at the very end,
you rewrite them. That's not bad.
Just gonna make a comment that I agree in general that a proxy shouldn't be changing the behavior or what's on the wire, but if we're making this look more and more like a security device and doing things like authorization policies, I can see us doing more normalization so that the way that we're interpreting something that is flexible, that we normalize it to how we parsed it and then forward that on to the back end.
So that's the tricky part, right, Justin? I mean, yeah, normalization to account for policy and then what's given eventually to the backend.
Right.
Most of the cases, it makes sense that both of them are the same, but sometimes if you fundamentally change things, then the backend is not going to be happy, right?
But H2 is defining things as lowercase, so there is no error.
No, in this case, it's fine, right? Headers, but some other normalization that might not be true.
/ and other things, but then that's another security.
Yeah, and those are header values, right? So
exactly,
like we already have, as Justin mentioned, a lot of work in flight for that. Right. So this is a much more narrow thing, and it has, right, the spec is very well defined. Right? It's been well defined for about a decade. Okay, so I guess there's two things in the short term, right? So one, let's go and check out the behaviors of H2 and H3. If they're forcibly normalizing, right, that's basically the class of traffic that's now not going to be captured would be, API clients that are now HTTP2 capable, right? And then we can see if we can push into upstream Envoy the ability to do header key rewriting, right? And they might actually want that, right, for the same reasons, right? Just to satisfy application backend. It's not any different than a form of canonicalization, really. It's just you let the user do it. So, and then the third thing we have to figure out is at what scope or grain do we want people to do this? Obviously, what Envoy didn't break the universe, right? Because Envoy got a lot of adoption, right? So there's enough people complaining, and that's still probably a relatively small percentage of the market, right? So still probably a relatively small percentage of applications. And that would indicate that this should probably not be a mesh-wide behavior, right? And it should be per workload behavior. Does that sound about right?
Yep, and also not an API because we may not be able to support it.
Not in what, sorry, Custom?
Not an API because we may not be able to support it. I mean, a filter, not a first-class API that we guarantee to support it because, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so. So
it looks like, I think, at least from a user point of view, Rama from Salesforce took this over, and his comment right now in the PR is they had a very high severity customer issue because of this. And
right, like I believe it's probably quite important that they fix it. Right, I'm not like, if that weren't the case, I would be arguing for not doing it at all. I think we should do it.
And he has a filter already. I mean, he can apply the filter today. It's not that it's blocked.
Yeah, that's true, Costin. But coming from him, I mean, they have been burned with on filter a lot. They know. So,
but we'll also be burned if we do the opposite, because who knows what will break and how many people. And we burn the H-bone plants because then we'll have even more difficulty.
He did make a comment that he was not able to do it for Envoy filter because of the proto merge limitation.
Yes.
Nested type config. So I'm not sure if filter would work for him.
Let's fix the filter. I mean, it should.
No, it does work. There were some comments on there that it didn't, but we figured it out. It was some bug, and we had an old version of Envoy or something like that.
Okay, so that's good. So at least he has an option to do it per workload. And it seems they've been running fine, without this for a long time. So they don't have a need to enable this for every single workload.
Workload and gateway, because you also need to, if it goes through a gateway, you need to preserve the keys there as well. But,
yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
But maybe not for the entire mesh. I mean, just preserve it for that particular host. And
all right, I think this is fair, Louis.
Yeah.
Let's keep it at Envoy filter for a per workload basis for now.
Okay.
I guess the decision where we say, can we make this on by default? That's a no, right?
Yeah. So what we should do is document how to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. reminds me overall, Louis, what are we losing by transporting HTTP 1 over HTTP 2? What else are we losing?
Well, if people like to check content transfer encoding chunked headers,
Yeah.
well, down conversion from H2 to H1 is, it is canonicalized and standardized. Right? If people were sending things that don't need to be chunked in transfer encoding chunked, that would go away. If you have an application that's sensitive to that, well, good luck, frankly.
But boundaries cannot be enforced. They're not enforced by proxies, so you're already screwed if you.
Yeah, like you would be in real trouble if you're doing that.
No, performance characteristics are slightly different because of the extra normalization, and I'm not sure which one is faster at this point.
Okay, I'll discuss this offline. I think I don't want to take up the rest of TOC, but that's interesting thing to look at when we start promoting it, to also document the side effects the user might see because of the protocol translation.
Yeah, they'll see, the header normalization for sure. They shouldn't see header key reordering.
Really?
They should not. No, I'm sorry. Value reordering within the scope of the key. Right, but most application code doesn't deal with that very well anyway, right? Some of them give you just the first header or the last header, right? I mean,
yes. Okay.
So no doubt there will be something, but it probably doesn't affect the overwhelming majority of users.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically reconstructing at the other side. So yeah, I mean, the sequence of headers are going to change, but maybe the relative value within multiple keys might not. And does it do any sort of like condensing, like coalescing or something like that when you pass in multiple HTTP one?
What do you mean coalescing here?
You can have a repeated header is concatenated, as far as I know.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So suppose in the client, it's an x-foo bar, x-foo baz on two separate lines, right? That's valid in HTTP 1.1. How will it show up on the other side after you transport it on HTTP 2? I think it will be put separated by commas.
Yep.
It's actually, that's user agent dependent. I think they were allowed to do either.
I think standard is concatenated, if I remember correctly. I can check. I think they have a uniqueness. Let me double check.
I don't think it's not a requirement of the spec, because either form was allowed in HTTP 1.1. Okay, so
yeah.
Okay, so John, I think you have the answer to your question. Can we make this on by default? No.
Yep.
Do we need an API to configure this? No.
Yeah, not now.
Right now. We should do some verification about what Envoy's implementation in H2 is doing.
Yeah, this is very interesting. Thanks for bringing it up, Louis. Now I'm thinking so many ways of it. My legacy apps might be broken.
Yeah, I mean, it's at some point. I don't know what the deprecation timeline for HTTP 1.1 will be. 10 years, 20 years, but it will happen. All those sub clients out there are going to have a whale of a time. I think we have an answer, right? So do we have many user reported issues on this in GitHub?
It's not that common.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, the other thing there, right? I mean, it's a pretty easy answer to users, which is like, look, here's the HTTP2 spec. If at some point your client goes through a CDN, What do you want us to do? Right, if it's internal east-west, yes, right, which is why we will offer them a workaround, and we can try to make the workaround easier. So I think that should probably be our focus. But
yeah, they can't always declare the port as TCP as well if they're
yes,
not HTTP, even though they're very, very close to HTTP.
right, which is fine actually.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to capture that in the options above. Capture if they declare the port as TCP and they had protocol detection on, though, they would have a problem, right?
Yeah, but if you explicitly declare it TCP, then you turn off the detection.
Okay. Maybe that's probably the best recommendation in the short term.
So would they lose a lot of HTTP metrics?
Yeah, I mean they would lose.
Thinking.
Sure, but right, I mean they're not sending HTTP traffic, right? And they're violating the spec. It should at least motivate them, right? Right. I mean, if it's a small percentage of cases, like the workaround is easy, just declare your port as TCP. You know, when and if you get some time, go back and look at your app, right? But you know, this is the easiest workaround. And then there's a harder one, which is something that does header manipulation, so you can turn it back on.
Yeah, I think this is good. I think the decision we came at should probably move on to other topics.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Okay. Release managers. John, you brought this up.
Yeah, I think I saw there's some info at the top of some people have already volunteered.
Yes, we have 2 volunteers, and I have an AI to follow up. Upgrade Grafana to the Agpl licensed version.
Yeah, so basically we somewhat ship Grafana, like not really, but we ship dashboards and like a sample deployment using them. They, in Grafana like 8, I think, they switched their license to Agpl, which may be problematic. There's some discussion on other projects which integrate slightly more with Grafana about whether this was okay or not, and it seemed kind of unresolved. So I just wanted to get confirmation from someone that we should do this so that I don't get in trouble if I bump the version. So we probably don't need to discuss it here because I don't know if anyone here is like the right people to do this, but it'd be great if we could get in contact with someone that can kind of give us the green light.
Steering has talked about this. But Kevin is probably the best informed person.
Do see Kevin here.
Oh, Kevin, are you here, sir?
As in me?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, I know that we've had discussions about it within Red Hat, but I'm not sure whether that would apply to Istio. I know that from our side, we ship Grafana as part of our product, and we looked at Agpl, and we were told that because it's a separate part that's not integrated into any of the source, it doesn't impact the source that we ship. So it's a separate deployment, separate code base, and everything. So that was the advice that we came back with, but I'm not a lawyer, so take that with a pinch of salt.
Okay, so Red Hat. So I'll just record what you determined. It wasn't integrated into code. It was to ship.
If there are specific concerns that John has, then I can go back and double check with the lawyers about that, just in case there's more context that might change their minds.
So we don't ship Grafana either, right? The only thing we reference Grafana is in the samples that we point to their image. That's it.
Yeah, I think we're even less. Like I would be very surprised if we were broken. Like for example, Linkerd does something similar, but they actually ship like a Linkerd/Grafana image, which is just wrapping it with like, I think they just have a Docker image with their dashboards in it, basically. We literally use the upstream Grafana image directly, so it'd be a big stretch if you can't even reference it in the YAML or something. But
Yeah.
So we're a consumer of it. I mean, we're not like shipping for them. We're just promoting for them, basically.
Yeah, so it certainly seems likely that we can continue to do what we are doing.
Yeah.
We need a lawyer. That's the job for steering. So we can take it up on Friday. I would be surprised if there's a problem given how we ship their distribution. Well, we don't ship it, right? We just reference it in its original form completely.
It's just configuration in a way.
Okay. Maybe I'll just. Kevin, do you?
Bring it up, Louis.
Yeah, I guess whose lawyers do we want to be the lawyer for this? I'm happy to talk to Google's lawyers. Kevin, I don't know. Do you want to talk to Red Hat, or Neeraj, you want to talk to your lawyers? Then
Our lawyers are gonna not come back in the time frame you like.
okay.
Yeah, we probably won't have a good turnaround. I don't see this as a problem. I mean, I've worked in open source for a long time, but certainly good to run by a lawyer.
Yeah, Louis, I'll see if I can. I'll ask the lawyers that I spoke to see if I can share their advice with you, so that you can see what we have been told internally. But I would certainly suggest you talk with Google's lawyers about it. I suspect the answer is, as other people have said, we're not going to be impacted by this. But
yeah, I expect that. I guess the question right now is, we can treat the combined knowledge of Google's lawyers and Red Hat's lawyers and just say those are the Istio lawyers for the moment.
So Louis, I did check the steering committee minutes, and it looks like the action item was Louis will get a description of how we use Grafana and Istio.
You were expecting me to remember something that happened 2 weeks ago.
No, I'm just saying so we should maybe get a description of how we use Istio here, how we use Grafana here, so that you don't have to go around in circles.
Oh no, I have a description, right? Right. It's referenced as a configuration in install tools, right?
Yeah, I think that's good enough. All right.
Can't type. Okay. Shouldn't be too hard. Okay. Environments roadmap. I am happy to present.
Okay.
If Jacob is here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Excellent. Oh. Presumably this tab. Let's see the right thing.
We're still seeing the TOC meeting
Okay.
notes.
Yeah, okay, 1 sec. How about now? Excellent.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. You want to just start working your way down through it and tell me when you want me to scroll?
Yeah. Keep scrolling down until environments is on the left side. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Right there, and then scroll to the right a little bit. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So here's the current plan for 1.11 for environments. We'll start with revision-based upgrades. Revision-based upgrades have been alpha for a while. We hope to actually try to get it to beta for 1.11. Unfortunately, we don't have an owner for it to actually push this promotion forward. And it's also pending cross-version compatibility testing, which is listed above. So yeah, just given kind of feedback that we've received from users, actually getting kind of better support for multi-version cross compatibility is a concern in order to make this beta. One of the other features around revision-based upgrades that is currently in progress, Sam is spearheading the effort to get stable revision labels that were introduced from 1.10. They are currently experimental, but the plan is to get them into alpha. So I think the overall, goal is to actually get this into beta. But yeah, again, we're just looking for an owner for this. Yeah, and then kind of going on down, multi-cluster, again, multi-cluster. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped that. External Istio. This is another one that needs an owner as well. But the the hope is if somebody can actually step up and again push this into beta. This has been alpha for a while, I believe over a year. I could be wrong. So we have kind of two action items that are P0 that are kind of needing an owner at this time. I'm not sure exactly what that means. If we should kind of ask for more input or put them down from P0 to P1. But the hope would be to actually get these both actually put into beta for 1.11 if possible. Going on down the list as well into multi-cluster, Nate is going to be leading the effort from taking multi-cluster from beta to stable. And I believe he has an Istio enhancement doc ready. Nate, if you're on the line, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn.
It's actually transitioned to Stephen Landau, so he's.
Oh, it has.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I will update this document as well. Thank you for that update. Yeah, and then going into Helm V3. Helm V3 going from alpha to beta was delayed for 1.10. There's a little bit of rework that is being done for Helm. Things have moved from the base chart into Istio Discovery, and we're currently evaluating kind of our approach to the CRD and kind of how Helm manages the CRD folders. So I'm hoping to get this from alpha into beta for 1.11, and I should have a doc pretty soon here on exactly the things that are required for this to be done. I know that there has been some concerns around some of the changes to naming that are currently underway. So hopefully we can mitigate that going forward and actually make this a bit more stable and add more testing and whatnot.
And I would like to add on this topic that we have started to review the API surface for the Helm, and there is a document that that is proposing, because we have values.yaml and a lot of the options in installing IstioD are the sum of all the options in the world. So we are trying to move to beta proxy config parts of the values and other things. And we need all groups to be involved in this because it's a pretty core API.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of speaking along, I guess, similar lines. Yeah, just mesh config cleanup, proxy config proposals that are currently in the design session or design discussion phase, right? Which Costin is kind of spearheading that effort. And then, kind of the last thing that we are hoping to actually get done for 1.11. John recently got gateway injection to alpha. I think it was last week or just a few days ago. And the plan would just be to continue this work and try to get it into beta for 1.11. So these are the major things themes that we're focusing on for 1.11. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that puts things at risk is just kind of lacking an owner for some of the topics at bay right now, really.
Jacob, quick question here, or actually, so looking at the operator row 58 is Ostromat. Is he still working on Istio? I thought he's no longer working in the Istio project. So you might need an owner for that too.
Wait, that's Martin Ostrowski. He's working on Istio.
Oh, he is. Sorry, I think I confused GitHub GitHub nicknames then. And then that's good.
But as operator, again, the API surface is alpha and it's too large to move to beta. And it's part of the discussion about what we can support long term, because it's the 1,000 options.
Yeah, no, makes sense. And then revision based upgrade. So what's remaining from the user experience point of view?
From user experience, they're mostly out of the user view because of the tags. And the UX for tags is still in progress. I mean, it's a Rhino experimental in Istio Cattle, but it seems to be the future. I mean, that's at least a consensus in environments.
So Louis, question for you. Do you think if Istio, the concept of tags remains at alpha, right now it's experimental, suppose in the next release we make it alpha, I don't think we can make the whole revision-based upgrades beta if that's the main way a user should use revision-based upgrades.
Tags depend on revisions. I mean, they use underneath everything there is a revision. The UX, I agree, it cannot be beta, but
so I mean, like it's allowable, right? You can come to the TOC for an exception about feature progression, right? As long as you have met the requirements for beta, it can be considered, right? We don't have to, right, lockstep
go through the progression,
right, to a release. We don't have to do that. So if it's clearly in the best interest of the project to progress this faster, then we should make progress on that. And I think we all agree that tags are better than what was done, right? It's easier for users than what's there.
So can we add that, Louis or Jacob, basically, that we should have the tags based, I don't know if it's another row or it's a part of revision based upgrade. Basically, they should kind of move in lockstep, in my opinion.
Yep. So we can try to make the tags better. It's the underlying mechanism is similar. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's reasonable. So quick question, the revision-based upgrade, is that only for Istio Cattle, not for Helm? And I assume that that's only for control plane, or does that also include the gateway?
It is for Istio D. It is also for Helm. Helm supports revision-based upgrade and tags as well. But for gateways, that's different because we are moving towards the injection, and it's a separate row. It's row 63. And
CNI.
Yeah, and with the CNI is actually, I think it's networking, but I don't know.
But CNI is in place, right?
Sienna is in place, of course. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's impossible to.
So I think this is
because
where. I'm sorry. Go first, Lynn.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's a little bit confusing because you have Helm version 3 as a promotion item, and there's also some dependency or how you want to call it, also revision-based upgrade also scheduled for promotion.
They're orthogonal. I mean, Helm supports revision-based upgrade, and it can be promoted for Istio independently of the revision.
Right, but when you have that beta, you would assume, you know, the revision-based upgrade for Helm is also beta.
And I think that's probably something we should add to the beta document, right? For Helm, right? Nirj?
Yeah, so I think, Lynn, what you're saying is actually very important, but in my opinion, it is the whole Helm-based workflow. Whatever is done through Helm is currently alpha. It will go to beta if Jacob and the team can actually meet the requirements. That includes, in my opinion, revision-based upgrades. They will also be alpha, they'll move to beta. So yeah, so some of these features which you install and manage via Helm, it's confusing, but I think that's the least confusing part. If you use Helm, we should just say, hey, the Helm workflow is currently alpha. Hopefully it gets beta at the same time as revision-based upgrades, but if not, then revision-based upgrades can move. But if you use Helm to do that, you are basically choosing to use an alpha workflow. Does that make sense?
So
makes
it
sense.
will use revision-based, but the Helm itself will be alpha if it slips.
Exactly.
Right. And if revision was promoted to revision-based upgrade was promoted to beta before Helm, then that beta is only for Istio Kado.
Yep. But I think I think that, I mean, Helm is closer than the other. The only problem for Helm is having people, I mean, having POC and approve the reduced API.
Okay, well, I don't think we necessarily need to get into the line item details.
Yep.
The bigger item I hear from Jacob is that we don't have owners. Right, so like my instinctual reaction is the people who were the owners for bringing the feature into existence in the first place would be the default owner.
If they had the time.
Well,
I think Sam might be, Sam has his hands raised, so maybe he might be talking about that.
Yeah, I wanted to say, so I think another thing keeping revision-based upgrades from beta is an API to control which revision handles validation, and where we have like features on the way for that, but I think that before those are stable and tested in I don't think we can call revision-based upgrades beta or anything above experimental. Really.
Okay, I mean, not everything must be a beta at the same time, and I mean, we have alpha fields in beta APIs. It's a mix. We should not wait until everything is perfect. We can have.
Yeah, but validation webhook is pretty important.
Sure, and we have solutions for it. I mean, we can say validation is alpha. Validation API is alpha because it was just introduced.
I think whenever the promotion steps are done, you can just include the exceptions and then we can decide whether it meets the bar or not. But Sam, were you kind of volunteering and saying that you are working on the pieces that is, in your opinion, at least required for revision-based upgrades to be promoted? So should we put your name against it, or you are not volunteering to put your name against it?
Yeah, you can put me as the owner. I'm definitely working on pieces of promoting it. So.
Thank you.
Okay. And then for external Istio?
For external Istio, I would propose to move it to leave it P1 because it's not critical. Vendors have their own solution. I mean, it's mostly for vendors that run Istio outside, and they have their own testing infrastructure, their own criteria.
Who was the driver for this? Lynn, were you driving it when you were part of IBM?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I remember one of the key things we had trouble to promote to beta was the testing environment was different, and we were using kind cluster. We didn't have real key and certs for the gateway. So we had a little bit difference between what's tested in Istio.io and what we recommend user to use. So I do agree with what Costin said. It is a little bit vendor specific, and not all the vendors offer Istio as a service at the moment. And the key and certs and the gateway configuration certainly varies for different cloud.
I don't know if it's vendor specific in the same way that, like, we can't test an external load balancer with an Acme certificate in kind either, but that's a stable, non-vendor specific core feature of Istio to, expose a TLS service on a gateway. It's not like external Istio-D is like vendor managed Istio-D. Like, people use it on their own self-run Istio instances, right?
But
yeah, that's a good point. The Airbnb also use it. I mean, they manage internally themselves, and people use it too.
But really, external Istio-D is more like a concept, not necessarily as code, because it's just using stuff that already exists, and we just point the injection to an external URL. But that's not.
I guess the question is, what would be required to progress it? Right? If we need an exception to say, look, in our test environment, we can't do an Acme cert. Okay, well, we have other ways of testing Acme certs that we would. Or can have other ways of testing Acme certs that would allow us to feel comfortable progressing the feature. So what is, we can progress a feature with an exception, right? It's like the test environment can't do this. Okay.
But my point was that external Istio-D is more like a concept, the fact that Istio supports managed versions of Istio, externally. And really what the TOC should probably do is to say that, hey, vendors that have managed are responsible to test their own platforms and, submit any fixes in case there are breakages that disallows them from managing Istio externally.
Costin, Lynn just said that, right? Airbnb is not like a vendor, but it does. So it looks like this pattern is used beyond providers and vendors. So if that's the case, we should advertise the status of the feature as accurately as we can and answer Louis' question. Can we promote this feature either by exceptions or by actually meeting the goal? And meeting the progression steps. So are there ways to test it? Is there an owner for it? And the person who started this, are they willing to work on it?
Right. I mean, what's the difference between this and multi-cluster with a single master Istio-D?
You're not watching the Istio resources, right, on that cluster when you run external Istio-D. That's the key difference.
Right, but if I have an external cluster which has no Istio resources in it at all, right, but is watching multiple clusters, how is it different?
It's the same thing. No, external Istio-D is using exactly that same mechanism. The main difference is that it's using Acme certificates and you don't have the certificate distribution. So there are some steps are simplified. But it's exactly the same.
Okay, so then it does sound like we should be able to progress it. And it does sound like we would have test environments that are capable of testing this because we have test environments capable of testing multi-cluster.
If we treat them as the same, then it's already tested because the multi-test cluster tests are tested.
Right, which is fine with me. That makes progressing it easy, right?
That's reasonable. That's reasonable.
All right, but still needs an owner. Lynn, seeing as you helped create this monster, can you help Jacob find an owner?
Or fold it in a multi-cluster?
Right, there are lots of ways of solving the problem. We just got to figure out someone. And I do have one agenda item I want to get to, even though we're just about out of time.
Yeah, we'll have to follow up offline. Certainly, I think it would be whoever has most interest in this feature would be great because we're not using this feature at the moment at Solo. It would be hard for us to step in to help with this.
Okay. So you and Costin can still help Jacob figure this out offline.
Yeah, we'll try to sort out offline. See if we can get some help from other community members.
I'll catch up on the notes on this in a second. So the item I have on the agenda, some people probably already know this, but Josh is actually leaving Google and is going to go and take up a fancy job at a startup. And that startup is not an Istio company, so he will be stepping back from his Istio responsibilities as part of this transition. We at Google are obviously very sad to see Josh go, but we're also very happy for him and his shiny new VP of engineering title at a company in the networking space. So obviously, Josh has done a lot for Istio in the community since he has been with us, and so there's obviously some broad shoulders to fill, but and the TOC slot to fill. So that's something that we'll obviously need to take up. And Josh is not in this meeting, unfortunately. Otherwise, we could all troll him terribly. But hopefully, there will be opportunities to troll him and make him bemoan his life decisions the next time you see him. So anyhow, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew this. And obviously, there's lots to follow up on after this.
I mean, his contributions have been immense, and we'll definitely miss him in TOC and the product security working group.
Yes, I believe Josh mentioned this at the product security working group last week.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
And even though his new fancy startup is not using Istio, it definitely have a lot of people who worked on Istio.
It does. Yes, that is true. Anyway,
wow,
so
that's big news. Which company is he moving to? Is that allowed to announce?
Oh, it'll show up in his LinkedIn profile at some point. So
okay.
The company is called Aviatrix.
Wow, he'll definitely be missed.
Yeah.
So Louis, in the interim, for filling in the shoes, are we especially around resource allocation and stuff like that? Josh was really helpful since he was actually also managing the folks. Is it coming to you or Sven or somebody else?
Right now, you could kind of assume a hybrid of me and Shweta and maybe a side serving of Mandar a little bit while we figure this out. But yes, I will be wrangling the machinery of assignments to some degree.
Okay.
So yes, feel free to bring me about questions with respect to that. Okay, I think we are out of time.
Thank you.
All right. See you folks. Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.